I never thought of the apartments as something dramatic. They were simply part of my life in the same quiet way my grandmother had been. She wasn't the kind of woman who spoke about money loudly. When she died, the inheritance came in a tidy folder, 3 small apartments in different parts of the city, each already rented, each managed by the same agency she had trusted for years. The lawyer explained everything carefully. The properties were mine alone, inherited before marriage, legally separate unless I chose otherwise. My grandmother had left a note in the folder. "Don't announce what you own, just take care of it." I didn't treat that like a secret. I treated it like a habit. So when I married Amir, I simply didn't bring it up. We talked about everything else: work schedules, travel plans, whether we would eventually buy a house together. Nothing about the apartments felt urgent to disclose. They were stable, quiet things that took care of themselves. The first week of marriage was mostly pleasant, but there were small moments that felt observant. My mother-in-law Farzana had a way of asking questions that sounded casual but stayed slightly too focused. "How much is rent in your building?" she asked during dinner one night. "Quite a bit," I said. She nodded slowly, as if confirming a theory. Another time she asked if I had ever invested in property. I told her my grandmother used to care about real estate. That answer seemed to satisfy her more than it should have. I assumed she was just curious. Families often are. A week after the wedding, on a Tuesday afternoon, the doorbell rang. When I opened the door, Farzana stood there with a man I had never seen before. He held a leather folder and wore the patient expression of someone used to waiting while families sorted themselves out. "Hello, dear," she said brightly. "We just need a quick conversation." She stepped inside before I had asked anything. The man followed politely. "This is Mr. Qureshi," she said. "He's a notary." I remember the words settling in the room like a misplaced object. Amir had just come home from work and was loosening his tie when he saw them. His confusion looked genuine. Farzana sat at the table and gestured for the folder to be opened. The notary spread several documents across the surface with careful, professional movements. "I thought it would be wise," she said, "to settle a few practical matters early. Young couples sometimes overlook these things." "What things?" Amir asked. "Assets," she replied. She said the word the way people say groceries. The documents outlined an arrangement where certain properties, current or future, would be placed under a shared family trust managed by Amir's parents. It was presented as protection. "In modern marriages," she said calmly, "things can become complicated. This simply ensures stability." Mr. Qureshi didn't speak. He just kept his hands folded neatly beside the papers. Farzana looked at me while explaining the arrangement. Not Amir, me. That was the moment I realized something important. She believed there was something to claim. I didn't interrupt her explanation. I let it unfold fully. She spoke about responsibility, about safeguarding family wealth, about how these structures were common in serious families. Every few sentences she glanced at the notary, as if expecting confirmation. He remained neutral. When she finished, the room became very quiet. I picked up the top page and read it slowly. Farzana began filling the silence. "It's really just a formality," she said. "Once we sign, everything is transparent." I kept reading. Amir looked between us, increasingly uneasy. Finally, I placed the paper back on the table. "I think there may be a misunderstanding," I said. Farzana tilted her head slightly. "What misunderstanding?" "These documents refer to marital property." "Yes," she said patiently, "but the assets you're referring to don't fall under that category." Her expression didn't change yet. "What assets?" "The ones you believe I brought into the marriage." For the first time, the notary looked directly at me. I continued calmly. "My grandmother left me 3 apartments before the wedding. They are inherited property." Farzana blinked. I turned to Mr. Qureshi. "My understanding is that inherited assets remain legally separate unless transferred voluntarily. Is that correct?" He cleared his throat gently. "Yes," he said. "That is correct." His tone was completely neutral. Not confrontational, not sympathetic, just factual. The documents on the table suddenly looked irrelevant. Farzana stared at the papers for a moment as if they might rearrange themselves. "I wasn't aware of that," she said. That's why I mentioned it, I replied. Amir leaned back in his chair. You inherited apartments? He asked quietly. Yes. He nodded slowly, absorbing the information without surprise, just curiosity. Farzana looked between us. But if you're married, she said carefully, surely such things should be shared with the family. Shared within the marriage, I said gently. Yes. Another silence followed. The kind where everyone realizes the conversation has already ended. Mr. Qureshi began gathering the papers into his folder. No signatures required then, he said politely. Farzana didn't stop him. The folder closed with a soft click. She stood up and smoothed the front of her jacket, her composure returning in careful layers. Well, she said, it was only a precaution. I nodded. Precautions can be useful. They just need the right assumptions. At the door, Mr. Qureshi offered a courteous goodbye. Farzana followed him out without another mention of trusts, transfers, or shared assets. When the door closed, Amir looked at me for a long moment. You really own 3 apartments? Yes. And you didn't think to mention that? I smiled a little. It never seemed urgent. He considered that. Then he laughed softly. Apparently it was. Later that evening I called the management company and confirmed everything was still running smoothly. Tenants, leases, deposits, nothing had changed. My grandmother had understood something about people. Silence can look like vulnerability, but sometimes it's simply patience. And patience, at the right moment, has a way of clarifying everything.